I am making two videos on how to get the alerts out of Kibana and into a different service. In this video, I want to talk about the server log connector. I'm going to show how to use the server log to publish the alerts in Kibana into a log file on the Kibana server. Then I'm going to use an open source tool called logstash to ingest those alerts from the log file and relay them to my email inbox. And in a future video, I want to talk about the index connector. I'm going to use the index connector to publish the alerts to an index in the Elasticsearch. And then I'm going to use the REST API and a Golang script to consume those alerts from the index and relay them to an email inbox. You'll see that there are other connectors available in Elastic Stack. These other connectors require a paid license. So as your needs expand with Elastic, definitely consider one of the paid plans because they open up a lot of possibilities within the Elastic Stack. But in this video, I'll just focus on the server log connector, and in the next video, I'll focus on the index connector because they come with the free basic package of Elastic, and they're just a great way to immerse yourself in the Elastic Stack environment. I should also mention that this video is the third video of my APM integration series. I will leave links to my earlier videos in the description below. In my earlier videos, I showed how to set up APM integration. I created a couple of services. So that would be a Node.js REST API and a Golang REST API. We instrumented those services so that we can monitor its performance. And we did the initial setup of alerts so that they appear within Kibana. So this video will be a continuation of the alerts on how to work with the index connector and the server log connector to get the alerts into a different system. So let's get started. Let's start with the server log connector first because I think it's the easiest one to work with, especially if all we care about is putting the alerts in a log file and then using a tool like logstash to relay those alerts to our email. So I'm going to click on this menu, go to the alerts area. You will see that we have some active alerts. And if I click to manage rules, these rules we set up earlier. We can add connectors at the time of creating a new rule, but because we already have these rules here, we'll just edit them, especially since they're already generating the alerts that we need to do our demonstration with. So this error count rule, it's firing every minute as opposed to on status change. I choose on check intervals of every minute just so that it makes this demonstration a little bit easier when we have alerts constantly being generated. I'm going to click on the server log connector, and we will run it when the threshold is met as opposed to recovered. And you can see I have a connector here set up from a previous exercise, but if you don't have a connector here, just make a new one. Let's say connector 2. Call it anything you want, anything you find meaningful. Okay, so we're going to use the connector 2, and let's look at the message here first. This is the message that's actually going to be written to the log file on our Kibana server. And you can see it's got some event data or variables in these, I think they're like mustache-like variable template variables. If you want access to more variables, just click on this add rule variable icon, and you can see a list of all available variables that you can use for the message. They've got a nice description to explain what they do, but we'll just go ahead and use the default message here. I also want to talk about the level here. Now you can flag this message as a trace or debug info warning error or fatal level. And this can help with the filtering later on. So which level you choose really depends on your situation. This rule that we designed here, was it meant to be an info type of level or an error level or fatal level or debug level? That's up for you to decide. For now, we'll just pick error level. No reason, just because this is a demonstration. Doesn't really have any criticality associated with it. And just like that, I can press save. If you actually want multiple entries, or if you want multiple connectors, you can actually add more, right? So I already have connector 2 here minimized, but let's say we want to create another connector, and it's also another server log connector. And we could use the same connector 2 or connector 1. I'll just pick connector 2. And maybe this time, for the same alert that gets fired, we'll use the same message, but maybe we'll flag it as fatal instead. Okay. That way you can have multiple connectors for the same rule. So I'll just press save. Oh, and in case it's not clear, the reason we want different levels is, or you use the levels to help you filter out the messages later on, which I'll demonstrate somewhere probably in this video. All right, so I'll press save. And just like that, our error count rule is updated. The connector should be already publishing these alerts to a log file. And to find the log file, let's go to our Kibana server. So this terminal window is already SSH'd into the Kibana server. And if you go to the var log kibana directory, there is a file called kibana.log. And you can see, if I just scroll all the way to the end, you can see that our alerts are already being published and being appended to the end of this log file. So you can see that this one, let's see what the level was. The level was error. Error count is firing because of the following conditions. And you can see this was the message that we intend to publish to this log file. This one is the fatal one, right? So same message, but the only difference is we used a different level for it. Okay, so this file will constantly be updated as the alerts fire. And just to make things interesting, I think I'll go ahead and also set up another server log connector for, let's say, the latency rule. Just so we have a bit more content to work with in this demonstration, I'll reuse, let's say, this connector. And maybe I will also use error for this one and just press save. And actually, let's go ahead and do the fatal transaction error as well. Oh, it's interesting that this isn't firing or it's not active. I'm just going to modify this rule quickly. Maybe I need a greater window for the Kibana, for the Elastic Stack to keep up with indexing or grabbing the content from APM. All right, so that's the rule we're going to use. Let's also, and maybe I'll just do an info for this one. All right, I'll reuse the same message. I don't really need to add additional variables. All right, so I think in a minute, let's take a look at our kibana.log just to see if we have more than just the error count rule. Right, so we see the failed transaction rate rule has been appended to the end of this file. Latency alert is also appended to this file. And I believe I've set them to trigger on check interval. So we're going to get lots of alerts to work with in our demonstration. All right, so we've got all the alerts into our kibana.log file. So at this point, with the alerts in a log file, you could write your own scripts to parse out the log file and do whatever you want to do with the data. One of the other popular things you can do is using logstash. So let me pull that up over here. So logstash is a tool that is meant to consume log files or ingest log files. Then you can transform it however you want and then output it or load it to a completely different service. And you can find some documentation on it here on the Elastic website. And we're going to use it because it's such a simple thing to use. All right. We'll start by installing it on the same server as Kibana because we want logstash to consume that kibana.log file. So it makes sense to put logstash on the same server. Now, installation is pretty straightforward. I already completed these steps in advance because these are the same steps that are needed to install Kibana. And because this server has Kibana on it, we already have all the necessary repositories and update all the necessary dependencies to install logstash. So I can just skip straight to this one command here and just install logstash here. All right, so we'll give it a moment. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, yeah, so logstash is installed. And I think if I go to this directory here, oh, sorry, not this one. This one. You can see that we have the logstash binary executable here, which we will use in a moment. Now, doing a full explanation of how logstash works is beyond the scope of this video. Maybe in the future, I'll make a video on just a few more things about logstash. For now, I'll just do the quick and dirty way of using it. I'm going to make a note. Actually, I'm not going to make it here. I'm going to go back to my root directory and I'll just say command. I'm just going to make a command file or a shell file and paste in the command that we're about to use. So I'm going to paste this command in here. Now, this is the command to run logstash. I mean, there's many different ways to run logstash. This is just one of them. And what this command is saying is that I want to run the logstash command, and I want to, for the input to logstash, I want to read this file, var log kibana.log. And I'm going to parse it using a JSON codec. And we're going to start reading this log file from the very beginning. Right? So that's what this block says, input file. Right? I'm just going to fix up some of the spacing here. Okay, so that's the input. And once it's that this input file has been read into logstash, we want to just output it to standard out. Right? A very simple command. I just want to use this to demonstrate parsing or to ingest a log file. So I could run this sh command, or I can just run this straight from the bash terminal. Like do this. So it might take a moment to start up. I've increased the memory on this Kibana server to 1 gigabyte, or is it 2 gigabytes? I forget. When I had too little memory on the server, logstash doesn't seem to start up. It might just give me some memory errors or crashes. But when I increased it to, I think, about 1 gigabyte of memory, logstash seemed to have worked fine on this server. And it's also running Kibana in the background. Okay, so we'll give it a moment to start up. Oh wait, there we go. It's still going. All right, so let it go, and it's still warming up. And you will start to see some there we go. All right, so what this is doing is that what you're seeing here is actually the content of the kibana.log file being printed to the screen. Okay, so you can see some of those messages here. Error count alert is firing because following conditions have been met. Line break, service name, node, app 1, line break, environment production, line break, threshold, 2 errors. And all the alerts are being printed to standard out. And as more alerts are being written to kibana.log, logstash will automatically print the next new record to this standard output. All right. So you could run logstash as a systemctl service, and this will just keep running in the background. I'm running it in, I guess, just directly off of command line here so that we can see everything in action. All right. So you see that the screen is updated again because new alerts are being written to the log file. And as soon as that happens, logstash is constantly watching that file and publishing the alert straight to standard output. So that's all great. But I think the next thing we want to do is we don't want to output these alerts to standard output. Let's output these alerts to our email inbox, right? Well, to output it to email, we kind of need an SMTP server or an email service. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use mailtrap, this website here. So mailtrap is great for development purposes. It simulates or gives you an SMTP server. But what happens is anytime you email something to a mailtrap SMTP server, it'll put it into these development inboxes so that they never really go out to real users. And yeah, it's great for testing because send as many emails as you want and they'll end up in here for you to review. So I set up a free account and I'm going to click on add inbox. Let's just say, let's create a new inbox. All right. And let's get some of the SMTP settings necessary for that. I'm going to, here it is. So we're going to need the username, the password, and the SMTP details. So I am going to update some code. So give me a moment. So I'm going to come back to my terminal window here, and I'm going to find my command.sh that I started off with. So now, instead of outputting the contents of this log to standard out, I'm going to output it to email instead. So give me a second. Let's paste this in here. There we go. So we're going to, I could output to both, but for now, I'll just output to email only. And what this block is saying is I want to send the alerts to the email address called user@example.com. And it's going to come from user@example.com. The subject is going to be alert message. And this variable actually came from the output earlier that you saw. I'll show it again in a moment. Okay. So the subject is going to be alert and the message, a body and the message. We need to do some authentication. So the username is this E21 and the password is the A2F as taken from the settings over here. And I'm going to send it to this address, smtp.mailtrap.io. Domain is the same on ports 2525 as specified over here. And just like that, any alerts that as soon as the alerts are published to kibana.log, a logstash will watch for it, pick it up, and then output it to the mailtrap server, mailtrap SMTP server. And if you replace this with other SMTP server settings, it should still work the same. All right. Now, this variable or event data message, where did I get that? Well, if I were to run the command again, let's run this again. So I'm going to pause until this fully starts up. Okay, so the service is started up, and that message variable is basically this property within the Kibana log output from logstash. Okay, but you can also just as well access these other variables that are here, like log, logger, and you can even access the nested properties as well. But for now, in our email, I'm only interested in printing out the message. Right, so that's what that will do. And let's close this for a moment. And let's go ahead and run this command. I'll just do this just to make sure it actually runs with the appropriate bash commands. All right, so let's do this. And I'll give it a moment. Okay, so everything has started up. I don't see any errors here, just some warnings and info. If I click to my mailtrap, oh, there you go. You already see the emails. The alerts are being sent to my email. And there's error count, failed transaction, latency, error counts. And as more are being published each minute, they should appear. Let me clear out these emails. Yeah, and if I wait just a moment, maybe a minute or so, or less than a minute, new alerts should arrive. And there we go. All right. Now, there's some things I think it's a little bit too much. what you might want to do is you might want to say only have some of these alerts. All right, and that's where the log level comes in. And let me just update the commands to demonstrate what I mean. So if I say I only want log levels of if log level. So log.level is just one of the properties in that standard out stream that you saw earlier. Okay, and let's say I only want those that have fatal, or actually error, right? And close bracket. So that will help me target just the error alerts, and only those will be submitted to our email. So let me close this, or delete all these, and we'll give it a moment, and something should start appearing momentarily. And there we go. We're already starting to see some of the alerts that are flagged with the level error only. In fact, let's double check that. If I go here, click on this, edit, scroll down. Yes, this has a connector level error. This one is fatal, so fatal. So we expect error counts to show up. Did we have any error flags on these ones? Nope, there's info level. This one is also an error level. So we probably will see latency as well. Yeah, here we go. So we also have latency, but the failed transaction rate does not appear because the log level for that was info. Okay. Now there's one more thing I'll just quickly demonstrate is let's clean up these messages, or at least the subject header a little bit. And I will use a grok filter for that. Let's go back to our script here, X out of here. And in terms of, actually, yeah, let's, and I think I have a command written in advance, or yeah, let's add a grok filter that I made in advance. Whoops. There you go. So what this is saying is, in that standard output stream that we saw earlier for the message property, it'll have a certain content. And we're going to use this grok syntax to parse out some of the server log information, assign it to the variable called APM reason, and the service name. We'll parse that out and assign it to a variable called APM service name, APM service, and then we might as well update our subject now. Instead of printing the message, we now have access to these variables. And that way our subject is just a little bit cleaner and easier to read. All right, just a simple change like that, and I think that should make it easier. Well, to be absolutely sure that this grok filter will actually work, we should maybe do the standard output thing again. I want to inspect the data stream quickly. I'm gonna copy my previous command. I'll just paste it in here like this. Let it start up. Okay, all right. So we've got, these are the messages that are being printed to standard output. We want to grab the message. So let's, not failed transaction. Let's do the other one. This one, server log, latency alert. Let's just copy this message. And I'm going to use this tool that's online, a grok debugger. So this would be the message, and the grok pattern that we were using was, let me just grab that for a moment. All right, so this is the pattern that we were using. Let's see if it properly parses things out. Yeah, so if this is the content, server log, we want to get this piece. So we're going to assign it to APM reason. Service name, we want to parse this part out, assign it to the variable APM service, and then we will have access to it in the event data as variables APM reason and APM service. So I think that should work. So let's stop this. And let's just see if there's anything else we need to do. Nope. Okay, so I think I should be able to run this and have a better subject line. All right, we'll let this thing start up. All right, the service is running, and you can already see the better formatted subject lines in emails. And you can use a similar idea when updating the body message. So I shut this down. All right, so the body message here, same idea. You can use some grok filtering to parse out information however you want and provide a better, more meaningful body to yourself. All right. Okay, so that's basically all there is to using the server log connector and then using logstash to publish the alerts to your email. You could use logstash to output the content to other output streams or other integrations. So there's lots of options with logstash, which maybe in the future I'll create a video on logstash. So that's pretty much it for the server log connector and using logstash to push the alerts into your email. So in the next video, we'll show how to get alerts into your email inbox using the index connector.